Okay, so hi everybody. Just wanted to welcome you to day 2 of online instructor training. It's nice to see everybody again. We're very happy to welcome back Rob Piorkowski today. He is, as most of you know, Assistant Director of Online Learning at SUNY Online, and he'll be leading our training today. Just wanted to say a few words before we get started about the process going from here, because this is day 2 of training. So this is the last live training. So you are only the second group of new online instructors to train in Brightspace. Everyone else before you has trained in Blackboard. So I would say as a second group, you are in the best possible position to start online instruction at this point. We've had the pilot group come before you. They've alerted us to any Brightspace problems, and you're way ahead of many of the seasoned online instructors who I think some of them have been putting off, of course, understandably, they've been so busy, but learning Brightspace until the summer. So I think you're way ahead of that group. The only downside is that Brightspace does have a learning curve, as I'm sure a lot of you have been hearing. And normally we do spend a big chunk of the online instructor training on things like student engagement, intellectual property, which I'm sure some of you have questions about, and the checklist, which is used to certify your course to go live before it can run. So we're not able to get to all of these things during this Brightspace training. And we're basically going to send you some emails and do some follow-up meetings if we can. So today we're going to send you 4 things in email, and one is that checklist. You've probably seen it already. I think Antonia emailed it to you, but that is the checklist that we use that's based on the SUNY Oscar model. And I think before that it was based on Quality Matters. It's a 52-point checklist that we use to certify your course. So in between today and when you're teaching your course, so if you're teaching your course in the fall, you definitely want to have your course certified by the latest, I would say, August 1st. So you're going to use that checklist to certify your course, to build your course, make sure that you have all of those items on your checklist. And then when you have that completed, you would contact our office and we'll sit with you at a meeting. We can do it virtually or in person and certify your course. So I'll send you that checklist just so you have it again today. We're also going to send you a new intellectual property video. In the past, I've kind of run through the intellectual property issues with my own slides, but we do have a I guess it's brand new, a new video put together by our library expert in intellectual property, Carly Spina. So she's put that together and it's great. So I would encourage you to all watch that, especially if you have questions about using intellectual property in your courses. Then we have a student engagement video by Jeffrey Ryman in the CET. So he really has put together a bunch of tips for student engagement in online courses. I think that would be great for you to take a look at. And then I'll send you all of the resources we have for Brightspace and for further help going forward. We have one-on-one appointments available. We have asynchronous trainings if you want more Brightspace training. We have tutorials. We have a YouTube channel that you can check back at that's updated regularly for all the tutorials that we do. And of course, we have some live opportunities for trainings too, if you want more Brightspace training. So before I turn it over to Rob, are there any questions on that? The process or anything like that? Okay. Okay, so if you think of anything, I'll be here, and I'll see you this afternoon as well. So or feel free to shoot me an email. But Rob, I'll turn it over to you now.
All
Thank
right,
you.
Tammy, I have one question. Does this group have course shells to work in?
Yes, so
Okay.
they all have practice shells. So again, in case you haven't been to Brightspace in a while, the URL to log into our Brightspace instance is brightspace.fitnyc.edu. You log in with your regular FIT username and password. You all have at least 3 practice shells in there. Some of you will see more, but you should have at least 3. And then as of yesterday, you all have your fall courses. So if you are assigned to a fall course in Banner, you will see it there in Brightspace, and you can start building in your actual course shell. So you have options. You can, if you don't feel quite ready for your live shell yet, you can build in your practice shell and then copy over the content into your live shell, or you can just start building in your live shell. Your students cannot see anything there yet because it's come over in Banner. Banner sent it closed. We always sync with Banner, whatever's in Banner. So Banner sent them over as closed, and it's only for you to see at this point. So do let me know if you have any questions on that too. Great question, Rob.
There's a question in the chat about
Oh, sorry.
links from the last class. I can't remember where I could find those. Just trying to
Okay.
remember.
I wonder if Antonia sent those in an email. I'll ask her. Maybe I'll ask her to forward. Would that be good? I'll ask her to forward the email she sent after the last session, and then we'll attach those 4 new items I just told you about. Does that work? Okay, we'll do that. Thank you.
Okay, everybody. Welcome to part 2 of your what we call N2OL, new to online learning training. And I have to tell you, I do a lot of these trainings. This one's a little out of the box for me because it has been almost a month since we met. So what I wanted to do, luckily for me and for you, I I sort of kept the work that we did in its own course. So this morning I've been reviewing what we've done to date. Because again, this is just a little bit out of the box. And so what I'd like to do is I'd like to just take a little bit of time and sort of remind us, all of us, myself included, where we landed after the last training. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to launch up my version of Brightspace. Now, if you've been checking out Brightspace at FIT, one of the first things that you'll notice is that your version of Brightspace is a little bit different than mine. So don't be alarmed by that. If you're looking at your course at the same time, a few of the menu items, especially the ones that we're looking at right here, course home, announcements, etc. This they will be in different spots, but they're all sort of present in all of the tenants of Brightspace. And just as a reminder, that word tenant is used to describe a campus sort of portal of Brightspace. So all of the 56 campuses that participate in the SUNY system have their own portal in Brightspace, and you have your own, and that's called a tenant of Brightspace. So you have the FIT tenant of Brightspace, and I have the Center for Professional Development's tenant of Brightspace. So just don't be surprised. This top bar up here, what we call the main navigation bar, this is the same for everybody. There's different branding here in the corner, but the icons and the functionality are all similar. And then what we call the mini navigation bar, that's this one right here. And I'm inside a course right now. So this changes a little bit. From our tenant to the FIT tenant. So if you're following along again in your course, that's that's to be expected. Secondly, if just as a reminder, since I do so many of these trainings, I just want to remind you that if I go too fast, or if if you looked away and you need you need some more explanation, or you need me to re-explain something, please feel free to call me out on it in the chat, or just activate your microphone and ask a question. Because, like any other instructor, when you teach something over and over again, you can tend to, go a little quick or skip over something or something like that. Okay, so again, I mentioned that, oh, and also, if you are working with your course shell in Brightspace while I'm doing this training today, while what if you're comfortable flipping from Zoom to your course, that's fantastic. But there's lots of ways to do it. If you have two screens, that's even better. You could have your course on one screen. You could have this Zoom session on another, because I'll be demoing quite a bit. Um, but if you want to just take notes on a legal pad, that's cool too. I have instructors doing essentially these trainings, and whatever works for you is what's best. There's no perfect way to move through this training on your end. Okay. So we're looking at the Brightspace course, and this was the course that I used for training last time. And I just want to remind everybody, sort of where we landed. So we did a tour of Brightspace. We went through the menu items up here, and I just want to remind you, I'm inside a course now. So once I'm inside a course, the student view is always available right here. We will be looking at this as we go through. Just want to remind you that different than Blackboard, doesn't have a little eyeball. It has it's underneath our own identities up here. And I did want to make you aware of, under the notifications, we went through this too, under the notifications link, again, just as a reminder, this is where you have access to, and your students will have access to, the phone app that's available for Brightspace, as well as your ability to get instant notifications, and students' ability, they have to set this up for themselves if they want it, to get notifications through either email or or text on any of the activity in the course that's sort of outlined here. So if any changes are made along any of these types of items, you can set it up so that you'll be notified through email. Again, I'm just doing a quick review of, sort of what we did last time. And so we went through all of these menu items up here. And again, yours will be a little bit different. We're gonna revisit these during the training. So Nelson, you're saying you're not seeing what I'm referring to. Can you be more explicit? Can you activate your mic, Nelson?
Yes, I'm not seeing. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Okay, I'm not seeing the screen that you were referring to.
So you're not seeing my screen?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Tammy, are you seeing my screen? Yeah. Let's see.
So Nelson, what are you seeing? Are you seeing everyone who's on?
Yes, I'm seeing everyone who activated the video. I'm seeing them, but I'm not seeing, like, the screen that Rob is referring to.
All right,
Yeah.
I'm gonna restart my share, and maybe that'll just sort of, rejuvenate the screen for Nelson.
How about now, Nelson?
Not yet.
Okay.
Is something loading up, Nelson?
Let me click below here. Let me see if it's gonna get it.
I'm just wondering, the upper right of Zoom, you have that view option. Do you see?
Okay, I just click on the view.
And do you see side by side gallery? That's what I've picked.
I see gallery, and it's checked off.
Okay.
How about side by side gallery?
it's not giving me that that option. Let me see. Not doing it. All I'm seeing, gallery is checked off. Then I see hide self view, hide non-video participants full screen. But I don't know. I don't know if I have to go out and come back in.
Yeah, maybe try that.
Yeah. Okay, so let me get out and come back in
Okay.
and see if it will
All
help.
right. Good
All
luck.
right. Okay, thank you.
Nelson, before you leave, can I suggest something just real quick?
Okay, sure.
Just please click on I wrote it in the chat. If you can please click on the blue Zoom icon on your computer.
The blue Zoom icon.
Yeah, wherever that is,
Okay.
where all your icons are. It might be at the bottom of your main home screen. If you just click on that once, it should take you to the.
Okay. All right. I will, well, I just clicked it. I don't know. Maybe I should get out and get back in and see what happened.
All right.
I really don't want to hold up there.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Tammy, can you let him in when he comes in?
Sure.
That would be great.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Yep.
Bye.
Okay, so again, we went through some of these links here, and as we click on them today, because we will be clicking on them today, I'll go through those and talk about those. And then we went over basically the interface for Brightspace from the home page. I am on the course home of Brightspace right now, and essentially Brightspace is structured so that we can build folders. Each of these tiles over here are folders. Again, as a reminder, this stands for Visual Table of Contents. And in each of these folders, we created these folders. Brightspace calls them modules. FIT usually calls them units. Okay, and they're usually 10 to 14 days worth of learning activities. The ones that we set up were essentially some housekeeping folders here. One is our course information folder, and so we just set up the folder itself. There's nothing in it, but normally in this folder, in a course information folder, we would put in all of our syllabus information, usually broken down into smaller documents, chapterized into smaller documents. Many courses, almost all courses, have what's called an icebreaker activities folder at the very beginning. And usually inside of this folder, we have, what the name implies, just some icebreaker information, and try to get the students to get to know each other a little bit. I can show you an example of an icebreaker folder from another course that's all filled with stuff. And then we started our first content unit. And just again, as a reminder, I'm a former French instructor. And so I've just been building, a course in French here. And so these are sort of the main folders that students will be clicking in. Again, the first two are kind of housekeeping items, but then we get into the content, and in a foreign language course, usually one of the first things we teach, the first unit would be around students introducing themselves, knowing how to say my name is and where they're from and that kind of thing. And just to continue with the home page, each of these boxes, like this one is holding the folders and what Brightspace calls the modules. Each of these is called a widget. So this is the table of contents widget. This is the SUNY Online Support Services widget. If you want to call the help desk, this is the help desk information. This is the announcements widget. We created a few announcements in this course. So there's a work to do widget. This is all on the home page of the course. Students would see this anywhere where we put in some due dates for assignments or tasks for students. They would appear here. This one's kind of nice, this course overview widget. Now, these are at the discretion of your campus. So you may have some of these on your tenant of Brightspace, and you know, or some variety of this. So we had the course overview widget, and we have a calendar widget. This is pretty slick in that it talks about what's coming up today. Now, these are all dependent on dates that I have put in assignments. So we worked on this a month ago. I can't imagine there's anything due today. But if there were anything, any due dates on assignments that were coming up, this would display them. So it's kind of nice. It's intuitive. And then the last widget that I just want to, again, remind you about is the activity feed. And this is where students can post, and you can post announcements, but it creates a comment thread underneath it. And so that if students can chime in on anything that you put or they put in the activity feed. It's more like a bulletin board that behaves like a discussion board type of thing. So this is in addition to the announcements widget, where announcements are just push. In other words, an instructor creates an announcement and students read it, and there's nothing they could really do in terms of responding to it. The activity feed widget is one where you can post you know, an announcement or post anything, and it will create a comment thread underneath. So again, I'm doing a quick review. Sorry, I have to look past my screen here. A quick review of just, you know, sort of what we went over last time. And so what we did was we created a few of these modules of these folders. Again, Brightspace calls them modules. And the last one that we created was what we would call a content unit. So again, my first unit of work for students. And when I'm going to click on that unit, and I just want to show you again as a reminder what we did. We used first we created the folder by clicking on this add a module box down here. It doesn't look like a link because it's not a different color or anything, but when you run your cursor over it, your cursor turns into a hand, and that tells me it's a link. And if I click this, all I have to do is put in a module title, and I'll just put in something real quick. You know, les nationalités. So I click in a module and it I click add a module, and it creates a new module for me. So creating your units and your folders in Brightspace is relatively easy. All we really have to do is, this is what's called the content view, right? So there are no boxes or anything. We're outside of the home page. When I click on the content view, this is essentially the main view that students are going to interact in. So over here, I have access to each and every folder that I've put in here. And again, they're called modules in Brightspace. And so when I click on the one that we worked on last, here's what we did. First of all, we can add dates and restrictions to all of our folders, all of our units. So if we only want a unit to open up and then close on a certain date, just like in, I shouldn't refer to Blackboard because everyone's new to online learning here. So for each folder, you, the instructor, have control over the start date, the due date, and the end date. So every time we, again, add a module, one of the first bits of information that it's asking us is, when would I like it to become visible for students? That's what a start date is, by the way. Is that if I choose a start date, that's when it will appear in my course. The due date will add it to the calendar. and make and that will be the due date, and then the end date will make it invisible for students. So just keep in mind that start date and end date mean visible and then invisible, or visible and then hidden. Okay, because you'll see it as the instructor. That's what this little eyeball is about. Right over here, again, we have start date, due date, end date, and then all the way to the right, we have this little eyeball here. And this controls the visibility of this folder. And so, so that's once we create a module or add a module, that's the first bit of information. Just going to cancel that for a second. And then the second bit of information, this said, before I put text in here, it said add a description. And so here I just added a little bit of text and I put in a picture. We went through this, some of the features here on what's called the rich text editor. Every time I'm editing a document or editing something in Brightspace, I have access to these tools here, and many of them are familiar, even at first glance, like the styles, the boldface, the italics, etc. And then we had this cool little insert stuff, which we played around with. Again, you may or may not remember, so I'll show you in another document what we did there. But we did add an insert an image, and just as a reminder, we chose URL because I know Tammy mentioned intellectual property before. When we choose URL, we're able to add an existing image from the web. And so we went through the process of doing that, and we essentially copied the image address of something that we found, and we inserted it into this description. And just again, as a reminder, you'll learn best about all of this stuff when you play around with it on your own. But just as a reminder, when we created that, I just want to go back to the home page and show you what it rendered here. Again, we're in the Introduisez-vous unit here. And so on the home page, when we add a description, what that does is it adds it to the back of the tile. And the picture comes in here, and just again as a reminder, it comes in cropped. Only the top of the picture comes in. And I'm not sure if I mentioned, but this little fast forward button is for the students. The status bar down here tells me where I, the student, am at in this unit. And this fast forward button brings me right to the document that I need to be in, the next document that I haven't yet addressed. Okay, so I'm going to use, again, the breadcrumb trail here. Again, more review. The breadcrumb trail is something that tells me, indicates to me where I am in this, in the course and in this folder. So it tells me that I'm on this document right here, but I'm in the unit or folder here, Introduisez-vous, that's in the table of contents, etc. So I can use that breadcrumb trail to get back into the unit. And so once we entered the unit, I think the second half of our workshop, we spent the second half of our day last time, we spent time with this upload create button. So just again, I'm inside a folder here, and at FIT you call your substance folders your units. So I'm in my first unit here in my course, and when I want to add content, this is what you'll do. You'll click the upload create button, and we went through each of these items: how to upload a file, how to upload a video or audio, how to create a file. A bit of a misnomer, not a misnomer, but it can be a little bit confusing. Creating a file is just creating a blank page. So it's just If you want a blank page and you want to just start adding content, you may already have stuff in PDF form or Microsoft Word. You can copy paste into this. It really just creates an HTML file, a blank page. And then we also used create a link. You're able to pull essentially any link from the web into your course with this create a link function. So inside of this unit, we played around with the upload create button, and you can see down here what we created. We created just a unit overview page. We created a link. We created a video here, and again, it was all with the upload create button. We pulled in a PDF. We pulled in a PowerPoint, and I guess we pulled in another PDF. And then we ended on discussions. Okay, that's the last thing that we pulled in. And that's sort of where we're going to begin today. So again, we're inside of a folder or a unit inside of Brightspace in our courses. Over here, I can see on the table of contents, this is somewhat helpful in terms of telling me, oh, okay, where I am. This is grayed out right here. The introduisez-vous, that's where we are. And I think I may have talked about what these little icons are all about. So I'll talk a little bit about those right now, just to make sure that we went over that. But for everything that we pull in, everything that we create, when we look at it inside the folder like we're doing right now, we see these little icons here and, wonder what they're about. So let me start with the check mark. The check mark means, and students will see these too, the check mark means that I've visited this page. Now, as creators, as instructors, but as creators of our content, almost every single page will have a check mark next to it for us, the instructors. For students, they have to go in, and in order to get this check mark, they have to either read the page, but if it's something they need to interact with, in other words, submit something, they won't get a check mark until they do submit. So that's what this check mark is all about. It's basically monitoring whether the end user, as instructors, we see everything, but whether the students have seen this page or not. Now, this is personalized to the end user. So in other words, you won't know how many check marks a student sees in front of them. It'll be different for each student as they interact with the course. Over here, this little icon right here is called an accessibility score. And it's mainly for content that we either create or that we pull in. So you notice there isn't one for the video. These are essentially URLs that have been, sort of rendered in our course. But anything that's pulled into our course, like a PDF document or a PowerPoint, these are things that I uploaded or created. I get an accessibility score. So right here, this is real important, and accessibility is, something we'll be addressing sort of regularly. Great, Nelson is in, super. And what this does is it tells me, what if there's any kind of accessibility issue with this document. And again, accessibility is about anyone who has a visual or hearing impairment that is taking your course. Brightspace does a very good job of alerting us to any improvements that we can make for accessibility. And so I clicked on the little icon next to it, next to this document. The accessibility score is fairly good. There's one issue, and it's telling me it does not have a language set. And so guidance not available yet. That's okay. Let me see one with a lower score. So right here is a PDF I have. And so let's see what this one tells me. So this is only 5% accessible. I need to work on this. And again, what's nice about Brightspace is it tells me that, what I need to do. And so it's untagged. It does not have a language set, doesn't have a title. Interesting. I thought it did. And text with insufficient contrast. So if you see any of the, if you see a real low accessibility score on any of your content, if you can't fix it yourself, I recommend you bring it to your instructional support. It's not the end of the world. It's just, something that can be improved upon. Okay, especially if you have students in your course or any of your courses with hearing impairments or visual impairments. And so that's what this little icon here is all about. It'll help us make our content more accessible. And just so you know, what this is going to do is this is going to tell me what I need to fix. And then, so I need to go offline, work on this document, and re-upload it. Okay, that's how it works. I can't work on it right inside of Brightspace. That's why it has a little download button here and allows me to actually work on it. And then I do want to make you aware of these alternative formats here. And these are real cool too. When a student will see this icon, student will not see the accessibility score, by the way. Student will only see the alternative formats button and the check mark. The alternative formats is a great feature in Brightspace that for many of for much of the content in Brightspace, it will create alternative formats, some of which you can see here. Like I particularly like the audio version. It'll create an MP3 version of any document in anything that has alternative formats. Not every single document has one. Also, it'll create a few proprietary screen readers formats for students. So just so you're aware, if a student, does need alternative formats and, has questions about that, that's what this alternative formats is all about. So students will see that as well. Essentially, what we want to do is we want every time we bring content into our course, we want to make sure that it's as accessible as possible. So, a few things about accessibility. For instance, if you have any videos that you bring in either from YouTube or you have them stored elsewhere, you do want to have those videos captioned. And so if you're creating content and you're seeking out videos, you can search for videos that are already closed captioned. That will, sort of bring you a long way to ensuring 100% accessibility. But I think in terms of my review, I went through that kind of quickly. And so I want to know if you have any questions or because we did do 4 hours of training already on it, and I kind of zipped through it in about 25 minutes. And so I just want to know if there are any questions to date or on any of what I've just gone over. Okay. If you have any questions as we go along, as I said, feel free to use the chat and or your microphone. I'm comfortable with both. All right. So now for, sort of the meat of this morning's training is going to be all about engaging your students. Okay. So when we talk about online engagement, it can be somewhat of like a mystery to instructors, and maybe not at this point, maybe not for everybody in the room, but for some, perhaps, as to how's this going to work? How are my students going to engage online? What you're preparing here is a completely asynchronous experience. So, when we think about Zoom and, what we may have done during the pandemic, that was all synchronous. So we may have created online materials for students to access and maybe even submit and stuff online. But we still sort of counted on that synchronous interaction with students, during a designated time slot. Well, with asynchronous teaching, that kind of changes. And so since everything needs to be up online and students can interact with the content and the tasks and the activities in an asynchronous fashion, in other words, at any time from anywhere, we have, just a few, adjustments to make as instructors. And what I mean by that is, number one, when we talk about students engaging with our content, what we want to do, even if something is due on a Friday, let's say, we want to make sure in an asynchronous course that students have at least a 2 to 3 day window to access that assignment or that task and work on that task. Because in fully asynchronous courses, students are coming in from different time zones, and their expectation coming in is that within a certain time frame, they will have to complete a certain set of tasks. And so I put it that way because it's not as if we can't have any due dates and it's a free-for-all. What it is it's about thinking about access to assignments and stuff. Students need at least a 48-hour window to complete assignments in discussions, which we're going to talk about, engaging with discussions. They need usually, discussions are usually open for 10 to 14 days. And in other words, to accommodate the back and forth, student will submit something, and then student might wait, a couple of hours, maybe even a full day, for someone else to submit back and forth. So the time element gets a little shaken up in a fully asynchronous course. What we want to do is make sure that, again, students have these windows of opportunity to complete the tasks. And then we can have due dates. We can have hard due dates for tasks, just making sure that they have a pretty large window of time to access and complete those tasks. So much different than I'm going to open up something, for 3 hours, and you need to complete it in a given 3 hours. In a fully asynchronous course, that is, not appropriate. So what we can do in is we can have office hours, online office hours. If you wanted synchronous activity in your course, the only thing that you have to keep in mind is that a fully asynchronous course, synchronous activity is optional. So what does that mean? So what a lot of instructors do is they create online office hours for themselves. And usually that's point in time, maybe once a week for an hour. You'll be online at a certain point in time, and students have the option of coming in and interacting with you over anything they may need. But again, the expectation on the student end for a fully asynchronous online course is that I will be able to complete my work in the course as a student. I'll be able to complete my work in the course within certain time parameters, but essentially anytime, any place. So just keep that in mind. Anyone have questions on that concept or, that approach? Okay, so if there are no questions on that,
But I do have a question.
yeah,
In your experience, how many students, or what's the ratio of students that actually prefer a office hour, or how many do show up? Usually, is it at least half of the class, or what's your experience there?
In my experience as an instructor and as from what I've heard as an instructional designer, um, not many students, it's different at the graduate level. Graduate level students usually dig in a little more and engage in those office hour sessions. But normally the attendance is pretty low. Yeah. And it's really about making yourself available during that time.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah. Because there is something called, there's a new federal requirement for online courses, and I should speak about it, called regular and substantive interaction. And what regular and substantive interaction is about is there's now a requirement that in all online courses, there needs to be regular interaction initiated by the instructor and predictable in even fully asynchronous online courses. And so the way that has manifested, one of the design features it would be online office hours. That's initiated by the instructor, and it's also predictable. And so this regular and substantive interaction is essentially, having design elements in your course that distinguish your an asynchronous course from a correspondence course. It's a brand new regulation. It just came into being, I think 2 or 3 years ago. And it's what middle states accreditors now look for. It's one of the things that they look for when they are scrutinizing online courses and programs, making sure that there's interaction. And more to that point, they look at empty courses. So it's not even as if middle states will, your accrediting body will look at a fully mature course where there's lots of interaction usually between the instructor and the students. It looks at the design of the course. And again, on this score, it's looking for regular interactions um, designed by the instructor that are, again, predictable and initiated by the instructor. So online office hours would qualify on that score. So will discussions as we move forward in today's training. Discussions are very interactive and dynamic. Okay. All right, so here we are in Brightspace, and again, we're in this unit here, and essentially what I would like to review today is okay, so student engagement. So students engage with content that I create. They watch the videos that I put up. They read, hopefully, they read everything that I put in front of them. And hopefully there are tasks, okay, not just passive tasks like reading and stuff like that, but then there are tasks where they have to prove that they did the readings, that they looked at the videos, that they have essentially prepared to do a task that I have them do. So when I say task, that will encompass assignments, discussions, and I'll explain what those, the power of discussions in an online course, as well as quizzes and tests, any assessments that I've created for them. In other words, where they have to produce something and submit it to me. Students place a very high value on that, as do we instructors. And so it's worth taking a look at some of the tools we have in Brightspace to create meaningful tasks. I use that word meaningful in that what we want to make sure is that all the readings and everything that they've spent their time doing in our course with the passive activities where they have to read, watch, etc., that they all build to students, creating something that proves that, not only did they read everything, but that they're thinking about it, and hopefully, can display some critical thinking in the tasks that we put in front of them. Some tasks will be pure comprehension. They don't have to be high up on the Bloom's tax. Not every single task has to be high up on the Bloom's taxonomy. But we do want to, make sure that our content builds to and prepares students to meet the challenges of some of the tasks that we put in front of them. So let's take a look at what some of those forms look like in Brightspace. So the first thing we're going to do, and again, what we've done before is we have used this upload create button, and we've created a lot of just passive content here: PDF documents, PowerPoints, videos, links for them to look at. Now we want to create something where they have to submit to us. Okay, now in the first form I'm going to show you is the assignments. Now in Brightspace, whenever we create any of these interactive elements, Nancy, I do suggest at least one conference with students being available. I'm looking at the chat right now, Nancy. One conference, maybe once a week, maybe once every 2 weeks, just making yourself available. Again, students may or may not show up for it. So in Brightspace, where we want to create one of these tasks for students, the first task I'm going to show you is the assignments. And even though we're going to put this assignment in this folder here, what I'm going to recommend to you is that you create it in the assignments section. Now, some of you may be looking at your FIT tenet of Brightspace. You might be in your FIT course following along. That's great. You may already have a link for assignments right here in the mini taskbar. That's a pretty common design across campuses. So for me, I have to click on course activities and then assignments. The main thing is that we create the assignment in the assignment area. And so as you can see, I already have some assignments created here. We're going to create a new assignment so you can see what the form is like. And so when I click on new assignment, this is essentially all the information that I need to fill out. In Brightspace, when we see an asterisk right here, that denotes a required field. So so I have to give this a title. So I'm going to call this, let's see, we're in the introduisez-vous. So I'm going to call this polite conversation. And this is going to be an assignment for my students. I'm going to task them with, sort of identifying the elements of introducing yourself. Just because I'm coming up with that idea right here in the moment here. But let's talk about the form. The form requires a title, and then it requires a grade. If I want this to be a graded activity, the way online courses work is when I put a number in here, I'm going to make this out of 100 points. Once I fill out these 2 bits of information, the grade number, and then when I put it in the grade book, now I'm just going to choose edit or link to existing. That's what I do. I can choose assignments that are not in the grade book, but most of the things that we're going to create need to be graded. And so I'm going to edit or link to an existing. I guess I already have a category setup, I do. And I'm going to show this afternoon, I'm going to show you how to set up categories in your grade book. And so here are assignments. I'm going to put it in the assignments part of my grade book because it's an assignment. And so in our online courses, just need to stop here and explain to you what a category is. When you think about your developing your online course right now, what you want to what you want to be thinking about, and I know there's a lot to think about, but one thing that you want to think about is, and you may already have this set up in your face-to-face courses. The different categories or buckets of assignment types that you have or that you're going to set up. And so you may have seen quickly in my course here, in my fake course, I have assignments, discussions, and quizzes. Those are the three main gradable sections of my course, if you will, categories. And then even thinking about, okay, and so other different types of categories. Midterm exam might have its own category. Final exam might have its own category. In other words, the categories are the main buckets that contribute to the final grade. So again, some examples would be assignments, homework, final exam, final project. FIT has a lot of project-based courses. So that's what this category is all about. So I'm when I fill out an assignment form, it's going to ask me for these bits of information. So I sort of have to have them in my head as to how that's going to work. Now, if some of you are following along, you may have come here, followed my instructions here, and then say, when clicking along with me, you may have seen that you don't have categories yet. That's okay. That makes sense. I have set up the categories already in this course. So just be aware that that may or may not be available to you. All right, so again, I've only filled out 3 bits of information so far in the assignments form. The next thing is the due date. So is there a due date for this course? And so if I put it on there, that this is going to be due at May 26th, there's also a time here. Okay, so again, I can give lots of time for students to do this. That's usually what I do, but I do have a cold hard due date as well. All right, and then here's where I would put in the instructions for this assignment. Just going to type in a little bit so you guys can see what this is about and see how it renders once we finish creating it. So I'll put the instructions here. These can be very lengthy. In addition to whatever I want to type, I can do a file upload. So if I already, so Apollinaire is asking, do we set up the categories before creating assignments, etc.? Yeah, I would definitely set up the categories before creating the assignments. Now, you can leave it blank. If you're creating assignments right now, you can leave it blank and go in and then assign categories to everything after the fact as well. So it's not a big deal that we're doing it in this order. But for you, for creating a brand new course, this afternoon, I'm going to show you how to create those categories in your gradebook. So here is, I can upload a file right here. So if I already have this assignment all, well described and the instructions, I could just upload a PDF. I can link to an existing activity inside of Brightspace. So if I already described this in a document, in a prior document, I could link to that document just to show you how it behaves. It shows me essentially a map of my course, and I could go in and I could find the document, the instructions document, and link to it. I can do an external web link. So an external web link would be, you know, something like, I want you to read this article on the web, and I could provide a link to it right in my instructions. I could link to a Google Drive, or I could link to a OneDrive. I know I've showed you this before, but I can record some audio right here. This happens real, if I stop my video, or I can record some video just as a reminder. This is called a one-button studio. So if I click on new recording, here we go. I can do a little song and dance here about this assignment. And so if I like it, I'll keep it and I'll click add. If I don't like it, I just click on new recording. This is what they mean by a one button studio. It just, you know, I just get what I need. It's very low production. And then I can insert it right into these instructions right here. So again, this is the assignment form. Over here, there are some things that I need to pay attention to. And so here is availability dates and conditions. Now, again, start date is when it becomes visible. End date is when it becomes invisible. There are something called release conditions. Not going to go deeply into that. If you're really interested in it, I suggest you check it out. There's videos and tutorials on it, but essentially, so you know what they are, release conditions make it so that I can make prerequisites for students to be able to access this assignment. What that means is I can require students to get a 75 or higher on a quiz before this. I can make it so that students have to visit a certain amount of pages before they actually can see this assignment. And so I can set some of that up in Brightspace pretty easily. I can also I can create special access to this document. And what that means is if someone needs special access in terms of when it's available, if I put in dates here, start and end dates, if I need to alter that just for one student, or I need to alter the due date just for one student, if I click on manage special access, I'll be able to do that. So it's a great way to make accommodations for individual students. So those are the availability dates and conditions. And then for this assignment, this is under submission and completion. This is where I control the features for what students are going to submit. And what I mean by that is by default, this is an individual assignment. If I create small groups in my course, I can create a group assignment here too, but I don't have any groups in my course yet. But what I want to draw the category, you don't have to worry about here. This is not the gradebook category. This is just the category in the assignments area. In terms of submission type, this is where I do want to pay attention because this is what students are going to be able to submit. So they can submit, by default, they can submit a file to me. So a file like a PDF or a Word doc or any kind of external file. But I do have a few choices. If I just want them to type in some text or copy paste in some text, they can submit like that. If I want them, if I'm teaching a hybrid class, I can either do on paper submission or observed in person. Both of these create a column in the gradebook where I can enter things manually if I need to. Just so you know, when students submit something and I grade it, this afternoon we're going to go over the grading process. When I grade it, all of that is automatically dumped into the grade book for them. I don't have to adjust anything in the grade book after I grade assignments. I need just 1 minute. I have to go answer my door for a second. I'll be right back. So sorry about that. Joys of working from home. Okay. So again, the submission type, the default is just fine. Most of us have students submit files to us, and so that's so that should work out just fine. But again, if not, the text submission would be, you know, if it's something real short, like, you know, a 1-paragraph summary or something like that, you could also do text submission. File submission is what's preferable. And when we go into the grading process, I'll show you why. You essentially get a set of tools to mark up any files that come your way. So I would recommend that. Files allowed per submission. Now, this one, by default, it's unlimited, and that's for a reason. When students submit, first of all, students usually do not submit more than they need to. That's been my experience in teaching French online for 16 years. Even though I open everything up, they submit everything, you know, usually on a very regular scheduled basis, and they don't never submit more than they need to. If you choose one file, even though you only want one file from each student, if you have to return it to a student, or if there is a student makes a mistake and uploads the wrong file, if it's set at one file, what happens is there's no submit button for the students after he or she has submitted that one file. So unlimited is your best choice here. What you can do is you can restrict the file extensions to what you want. So if you're only going to accept PDFs, you can choose PDF only. But if you have a real proprietary thing in your discipline, where, you know, you'll only accept certain types of, you know, CAD files or Excel files or something like that, you can limit this to custom file types. And what this does, I have to put the extension in. They show me an example here, .pdf, .txt. So I could do, like, if I'm only going to take PowerPoints, I could do that. And I could designate the actual type of file that that I want from students. So that's kind of nice. And then I have to answer the question, and I really don't have to. I can accept the default here. All submissions are kept. Only one submission is allowed. Only the most recent submission is kept. I think some of these are about large scale courses. So if I have 200 students, you know, maybe I want to, you know, restrict some of the submissions here. But I think for most of us, we just want to keep the default. All submissions are kept. And then for each assignment, if I want to be notified, if there's something special about this assignment that, you know, I want to be notified through email, I can enter an email here and it will ping my email and tell me that your polite conversation assignment has, you know, so-and-so has submitted it. But I'll get, if I have 20 students, I'll get 20 emails. So this is by default left blank. I think if there's any kind of, if there's a certain amount of urgency or something on this assignment, I would maybe put my email in, but I've never used this function. I've never felt the need. Just so you know, when you teach online, And again, I'm trying to, sort of appeal to those of you who have never taught online and, are sort of in the, not really sure about, what this is going to look like. In an online course, Brightspace especially does a very good job of alerting us to everything that has come in from students into our course, and directs us almost immediately to things we need to grade and to the student submissions in our courses. So I don't want to give you the impression that you're going to have to look all over the place to find student work. It is literally going to be presented on a single page, everything that students have submitted. So just keep that in mind when if you have any doubts as to, oh, maybe I should put my email in here. Um, if you log into your course and there's student activity, you'll see it right away. So I just want to assure you of that. So those are the submission and completion features. Again, the types of file, how many files I'm going to allow. I accept most of the defaults here. And so that's what that tab is about. And again, I'm on the new assignment form. Here is evaluation and feedback. And it's the last one that I need to pay attention to. And so on this form, evaluation and feedback, I have the choice to add a rubric. You don't have to concern yourself with these learning objectives here. That is something that in the future might be loaded up into Brightspace, but administrators need to load up learning objectives if I want to connect this assignment in Brightspace to a particular learning objective. And then the annotation tools, I would just accept the default, that's fine. But what I would like to show you is how to add a rubric. Here, this afternoon, I'm going to show you how to create rubrics for assignments. But I'm not sure if I have any rubrics here. Yeah, I just have untitled ones. Let me just show you real quick what a rubric looks like. I'm sorry, I don't have it in this course. Oh, let me just jump into Brightspace course. Here it is. Just want to show you what some of the rubrics look like. I know I'm bouncing real quick here, but I do want to, in the FIT course, it's sort of like a brand new course. But here are some rubrics, and I know I have something here. A rubric is essentially a set of criteria for us to for assignments at the assignment level. Okay, Apollinaire, I will address your question in the chat for a second. In a second, I'll get right to it. But here, a rubric is essentially on the left-hand side, you can see the criteria. This would be for discussions, and we'll visit this in a second. Ideas, arguments, and analyses, connection to course materials. This is the criteria for student participation in a rubric. So in broad strokes, what it does is it sets up the criteria on the left here, and then sets up four different achievement levels: exemplary achievement of this particular piece of criteria, proficient, needs improvement, and unsatisfactory, all grounded in points. This is a 100-point rubric. And so the criteria here is stated on the left. As you can see, contribution, learning community, writing quality. Reason why I'm spending time showing you this rubric and not digging in too far, because we'll go over it later on, because rubrics do two very important things. First, they lay out the expectations for students very clearly. because one thing that students in fully online courses tend to complain about is that they don't fully understand the expectations of the instructor. Rubrics go a long way for any gradable task that we create for students to explain those expectations. They could even serve as a checklist for students in terms of, have I done this? Have I done that? But for instructors, I think the benefit is, really incredible in that when we grade students with a rubric, students, they essentially, it expedites the grading process because all of the feedback is preset. So it's narrative feedback that's already created. And when I grade with a rubric, all I do is I click on exemplary, proficient, any of these achievement levels that apply. And essentially the student gets 5 paragraphs worth of feedback. And all I did was click 5 different things. So I'm going to show you that this afternoon. This is just basically a preview. And we're inside the assignment document here, and that's why I'm showing it to you, because it says add rubric. Well, what does that look like in Brightspace? That's what I just showed you. And so for this, I'm not going to add a rubric right now because in this course I don't have any substantial rubrics, but that's okay. And so this is the assignment form. And so what I'm going to do, I'm just going to leave it here. I'm going to address the questions in the chat. So Apollinaire, you're saying, what if you're using Google Docs and work off of Brightspace or Brightspace essays? Can you do the grading manually? Okay, so it's a good question. So if you're working out of Google Docs, just a few things. Underneath submission and completion, you remember I talked about, the submission type. What you might want to do is either, well, you could have students, if you're working out of Google Docs, you could do one of two things. You could choose on paper submission, even though it's not on paper. Again, what this does is it creates a column in the grade book for something that is not going to be submitted directly into Brightspace. So it assumes that you're going to grade it offline and then manually put the grade in. But you can also, in the instructions, you can have students submit a link. So like, in other words, they're not submitting a file, but if it's a text submission, and I did this all the time in my course, in my French course, students would create an audio file in the cloud, like a Google Doc on the internet. And then in the assignment form, I would say, please submit a link to your audio file. So you could do the same thing here in Brightspace. And again, either way will still create that column in the gradebook. The great thing about instructing them to submit a link is I don't have to manually go in. I can grade that, and then the grade will automatically drop into the gradebook. So that's how that works. Is the way to add in rubrics separately, or do they have to be created within the assignment? Bridget, that's a good question. So rubrics, there is a form in Brightspace that we need to use if we want to use rubrics in the grading process. And as I'll show you this afternoon, so if let's say we have a rubric in a PDF, or there are lots of rubrics out there on the internet for us to look at and use. What we need to do is either copy paste that information and massage it ourselves, make it appropriate for our students in our classes, in the form in Brightspace if we want the full functionality of the rubrics. So they do exist. I'm going to save this assignment, and just show you that rubrics exist in their own area, and then we attach them. So Bridget, another answer to your question is, I create the rubric in its own section, but then I can use that same rubric over and over again for like, let's say, all of my assignments. So all of my assignments had the same rubric in my French course, basically the same set of criteria, same set of feedback, and students will get very used to that criteria and the different achievement levels. So you can create one rubric, like let's say for discussions or for assignments, and then you can attach that rubric in each and every discussion. Okay. Okay. So, all right, so I clicked save the assignment. I did it kind of quick. So I was in that form, I filled everything out. And now what I need to do is I need to go into my first unit, Introduisez-vous, if you remember. So I'm going to click on the content link here, because I'm in the assignment section and I need to get here. This is where I want to put the assignment. So when I do this, the assignment is essentially going to be to render here in this unit, but it also exists in the assignment section. So essentially all this does is it creates a link to the assignment, to the actual assignment. So here's what I mean. So I have all these cool things for them to read, to look at. This we created in the last workshop. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on, instead of upload create, I'm going to click on existing activities because I already created it in the assignment area. So again, these interactive assignments, these task-based things, any task that we create it in that area, in this case, the assignments area. We come into our unit, and when I want to place it in the unit with the rest of the content, I choose existing activities. And then I click on assignments because that's where it is. And then I find it. And it's usually at the very bottom or close to the bottom. So right here is polite conversation. That's the one that we just created. And the due date's listed right here. I did not adjust the availability dates, if you remember. I explained them, the start and end dates. And so here's polite conversation right here. That's the assignment we just created. If I want to move it, again, as a reminder, I move my cursor over this little grid of dots, and then I can click and drag and put it where I want in this unit. So that's how that works. Again, I created the assignment in the assignments area, and then I used the existing activities button and I put it right into where it belongs. So that's how we do that. Okay, so we still have another half hour, so I'm going to talk a little bit about discussions, two other different types of activities. So that's how we put an assignment in. We do something very similar with discussions. So here's course activities. That again, this you might have a discussions link. And I'm going to show you how to create a discussion. Now, we went into this just a little bit, and that sort of ended our workshop last time. Discussions are somewhat of a misnomer in online teaching, and here's what I mean. I shouldn't say misnomer, but the word itself is somewhat stigmatized in instruction to sort of denote, extra credit or class participation or that kind of thing. In a fully asynchronous online course, discussion can be elevated to a much higher level. You have colleagues, and when I say that, I think what we have, in discussion and I have PowerPoint on this, so I'm just going to launch this real quick. This is just a presentation that I've done before. I do think it offers sort of new possibilities. And what I mean by that is that you have the ability to monitor and evaluate interactions between students. So you can essentially set the students with a task, but then you can truly evaluate their collaborative behaviors in an online discussion. And if set up properly, an online discussion can really enhance a course from the student end of things, and for you as an instructor, in that your role as the instructor is to monitor and evaluate and of course design it. But for students, it's really the only time in a fully asynchronous online course where students can actually see each other and interact with each other. In almost all other areas of the course, students are interacting with either you or with content, your assignments and stuff like that. Here, they get to feel as if they're part of a cohort, and depending on how you set it up, um, students, they tend to engage much more deeply when they engage with each other. Now, all of this engagement is visible to the instructor, and they know it. And so it does sort of set up this new possibility for us as instructors to, to sort of engage students in this new type of gradable activity. It's not that foreign for students to discuss things in a classroom. It is a little different where all of those interactions are graded activities. So I'm just going to, talk a little bit about online discussions and how they work. Um, just a few things. Students will need guidance in this type of activity, but they do want to know what you expect from them, and I'll show you in my design example, a pretty effective practice in designing online discussions, but also where it fits into the overall grading process. Again, because of that stigma, they might think that it's just extra work, but it's not. And so there are instructors out there that, depending on the discipline, use the discussion feature in an online course. Use it to the point where it comprises sometimes 30, 40, 50% of a student's grade. Now, I'll let your discipline sort of, dictate that, and your teaching style. But please be aware that, it's a very powerful tool. Now at FIT, with discussions, you have um, um, two real powerful tools in play among your faculty. And by that, I mean VoiceThread, okay, is also a student-to-student interaction tool, okay, which would certainly fall under online discussions, as well as Padlet, another, very interactive, dynamic tool to use for student-to-student interaction. Whether or not you use discussions in your course in Brightspace is completely up to you. But what I would like to, sort of promote here is that students, again, engage most deeply when they engage with each other. But I think if, from an instructional standpoint, if you can think about professional behaviors in your discipline and how professionals interact with each other, and then create that kind of activity in your courses, I think you'll be approaching something really authentic, not only for you, but for your students. And again, the instructor role is to monitor and evaluate. So, much like a manager would with underlings, how well do they get along? How well do my underlings collaborate with each other? Those kinds of things. If you can make that, sort of connection in your course, it will resonate for students where they believe they are, engaged in a very authentic activity. Okay, so how do we design a discussion? We create an initial prompt, and that initial prompt should invite a variety of responses. You can't have a closed-ended question for a discussion. In other words, you can't say who started the Civil War, and if there's only, maybe 3 right answers in a group of 20 students, that discussion will shut down very quickly. So in broad strokes, what you want the initial prompt to do is invite a variety of responses, and then students will need instructions, clear instructions for how they are to proceed in a discussion, because a discussion in its best form will sort of be a place in which students make contributions that contribute or that create, a certain knowledge base within the group. And so your guidelines should sort of aim in that direction, where students might bring things from the outside, might be personal experiences, might be examples, or insights from individuals into the group. Just as a practical matter, one thing that we discovered early on is, again, when you don't have like very clear guidelines for discussions, students tend to just put them off and then, do all of their participation at the end, which does not serve the purpose of the activity. The activity should be that they interact with each other in a fruitful way. So there is, there's an effective practice in terms of making sure uh, that they contribute at regular intervals. And I'll make this PowerPoint available to you, after I show it. It's not long; it's just a couple more slides. But so that by the end of the discussion, you can have requirements for them to respond within the first 2 days, respond to each other within 6 days, and then by the end of the discussion, you might want to put a number here. By the end of the discussion, you must respond to at least 6 of your classmates or something like that. And just be mindful of the fact that it takes time. So when you're determining the workload for students, discussions will take time. So again, it's completely at your discretion as to whether you want to use discussions in your course, but I do endorse it as a very powerful, engaging approach to teaching online, getting students to interact with each other. Here are some ideas that have been used pretty effectively in online discussions, debating, doing a case study. Many times we provide an artifact in the discussion and ask students to offer their input. Could be a piece of art, could be any kind of artifact. They can review each other's work in the discussion. You do not have to come up with any kind of master question for them to answer. You can ask them to ask questions, and I'll show you an example of that. You can get them to interpret something, etc. Mainly what you want them to do in discussions is exhibit critical thinking behaviors. And when we couple that with a rubric, we can get some pretty powerful work done in these discussions. So like here's an example, and I just want to kind of zero in. I apologize if it's a little small here, but I do just want to sort of show you the anatomy of a discussion. I call it a 2-part prompt. It's might be a 3-part prompt. What I do is I set up this is all in my instructions for the discussion. I do a little bit of setup, and what I'm talking about here is the importance of asking questions when helping faculty. This is a class for instructional designers. And so when a faculty says, how am I going to teach something in an online classroom? I ask about how they teach it I basically come back with a whole series of questions. How do they do it already? And then, I get a conversation started around pedagogy and approach to and strategies, if you will. So in any case, that's what this discussion is about. So I do a little bit of setup, and then most importantly, I want to focus on the directions. I'm essentially telling my students to create an initial post. I need some pretty clear guidelines for that. So I want them to click on a link, paste it into the main body, and then I want, as an initial post, I want them to create 3 to 5 questions on what they just on what they read. Okay, so I'm using this discussion to have students look at something, read it, and then create 3 to 5 questions on their own. And then for the rest of the discussion, I want them to respond to each other. And again, I need to include some pretty clear guidelines along the way. And so what does that mean, respond to my colleagues? I can't just leave it at that. So I want to, give them an idea of what they can do. They can add a question or two. They can provide an appropriate response to any of the questions that have been generated in the initial post, or they can help their classmates refine their responses and questions. So really what I want you to draw from this is that when you conceive, or if you conceive of a student to student interactive activity, these are kind of like the essential elements that students will need to know in terms of understanding your expectations. They want to know how they should respond to the initial post, because all of this is graded, and then how they should respond to each other. And so here's another one. Again, the same setup. What I want to, just sort of drive home here, that they need specific guidelines for what you expect in the initial post, and then they need specific guidelines as to how they will respond to each other. And so I do like this text right here. Below are some examples of replies that will earn full credit. So I'm sort of tuning them into the fact that this is a graded activity, which they should already know, but also that some responses may earn credit and some may not. So so if they say, yes, I agree, that doesn't count. It's fine that they put it in there. They won't be punished for it, but it doesn't earn them any credit. So I want to be clear about the types of responses that will earn full credit. So just to read these, I know it's pretty small for you guys. Sharing additional ideas, relating an experience you may have had with similar circumstances, asking a probing question that seeks additional relevant information or considerations. So, so again, as an example of a student-to-student activity, this is about using rubrics. I won't go into that. Let's go into Brightspace and check out. Let me just share this with you in the chat real quick, if any of you want this, just as a reminder. That this is my little PowerPoint on effective online discussions. It's short, so it's not long. Okay, so here in Brightspace, what I did was I clicked on the discussions link, and I'm going to create a new discussion. So when I click on new, one thing that I'm going to suggest right here is that you use the topics. You click on new topic for discussions, and the reason why is there are forums and there are topics, but the forum will just take in whatever name I create for my topic. So without going into a lengthy explanation, I recommend when you create discussions, create topics. And so the topic title here is going to be, I I guess because I'm losing my creative steam here, I'm just going to call it introducing yourself in French. Ugh, it's terrible. I usually try to create like a more provocative title here, but that's fine. Introducing yourself in French. When it asks, it's going to ask, just like the assignment form, we're going to see a lot of similar features. We're going to make this out of 100 points. In the grade, we have to attach it to the grade book. Again, it wants to know which category it belongs in. So this afternoon, I'm going to show you how to create these categories. So just know that I've created a discussions category. Forehand, here is where I can put in my my instructions, and so I have them here. And this is just something. This is the Google Doc of what I had in my what I had in my little slideshow there. So I'm just going to copy paste this real quick just to show you how it renders. So I'll keep the formatting. This is what we looked at before, but I just copy pasted it into the description, not really the instructions, but they are instructions. And so that's the first page, and very much like the assignment form. So I filled out the title, then instructions. Over here, we have the availability dates, again, when this will become visible, when it will not become visible. By the way, I don't use these very often. I sort of came around to really liking when everything is visible. When I start messing with these start and end dates, when I teach my following semester, I have to remember to change these start and end dates. Now, there's a tool that will help me do it. But it's just one of those pieces in online teaching where I would just prefer that everything be visible. And then when I go in, I can turn things off. I can make things invisible as needed. But for now, I would recommend that you just keep everything visible. So I could put start and end dates here. Maybe I should, just to show you how they work. So this is going to start on May 13th, and it's going to end on May 23rd. And so this will make it visible with access restricted. So that's kind of nice. They'll see that the discussion is there, but they won't be able to click in and actually engage until May 13th. In terms of when I want students to, actually engage in it, I do have a few features that, I'll show you here. I can allow learners to hide their names. Learners must start a thread. This is very popular. Must start a thread, and the discussion thread is essentially once I post in a discussion, students are able, my fellow students would be able to comment on on my posts. So when I first come into the discussion, this feature can be really helpful. Learners must start a thread before they can view or reply to other threads. So in other words, any learner that comes in needs to actually create an initial response, his or her first response to my prompt, the instructor's prompt, and then only at that point, when they submit, will that student be able to see the other students' posts. So before that, so they can't really riff off of anybody until they've posted their first response in. So that's a fairly popular feature here. Posts must be approved before they display in the topic. I would not recommend this. Students, this means that you have to, as the instructor, you have to approve each post before it's actually visible. Students have the expectation that their posts will be visible right away. In terms of evaluation and feedback, here is where I can add a rubric again. And so I showed you that discussion rubric that I had. Fortunately, it's in another course. So I'm going to pop into that course later on. And here I can allow the evaluation of individual posts. So this is kind of interesting. I do like this as an instructor. This is my preference. And this is, as the posts come in, I can grade each post. Now, it sounds like a lot of work because you have 20 students. If you require 5 posts from each of them, let's say, that's 100 posts coming in. But, I just have to share my experience with you because I know at this juncture, it's hard to sort of see. But if you allow the evaluation of individual posts, it actually saves time because on the instructor end, usually what we do is we follow the discussions, we read. Sometimes we read more than once, different students' responses and comments and stuff like that. In terms of a time saver, I like it as an instructor when I can go in, I can read a post, I can give it a grade, and then I don't have to read that post again. And so it's marked as read and graded, and I don't have to, keep reading. So I only have to read it once. Also, I like the nature of it is when I evaluate individual posts, because a discussion usually lasts from 10 to 14 days, the length of a unit. Students students get formative feedback as they're engaging in the discussion. So I like that formative piece of it as well. So again, evaluation of individual posts mean I grade the post. The student sees the grade on the post right after I post it, right after I grade it. So I do find some value in that. If you do choose this and you're not going to just grade the discussion when it's over, you can take the average post score as the grade for this discussion. I like sum of post scores. So what that does is I create a schema where the students have to generate a certain amount of points on their posts, to get the high grade. And so that sort of pushes them while they're in the discussion to improve their performance. And so that's all I have to fill out here on the discussion form itself. So I'm going to save and close this, and I am going to insert it into the module. So just like when I created the assignment, I created a discussion here. And so I need to go back into the actual unit here. And just like before, I click on existing activities. And I know it's a discussion that I'm going to put in here. And so I have to find that discussion, and let's see if I can remember what it is. It's usually toward the bottom. Introducing yourself in French. Ugh, sorry. And so all I have to do is click this plus mark. And when I do that, it appears at the bottom here. I'm going to drag it up. And when I click on it, that's where I see the discussion, the instructions. So again, discussion topic, that's what you want to create, is a discussion topic. And so I just did a lot of stuff here. So I do, I want to know if you have any questions. So, I don't know if any of you have taught on Zoom, but when you teach on Zoom, you kind of You guys are being real polite. I noticed that I didn't have the video launched here because I was showing you the video for a split second. The video feature in Brightspace. But yeah, because we're at 150 right now. I'm sorry, 1250. Let me ask if you have any questions, and let's address some of the questions that you have. Like any questions about engagement, like or any questions you might have about the nature of activities for your online students, whether you have that, in mind. Grading categories. This afternoon, we're going to go in. We're going to set up our grade book. We essentially have four big pieces to look at. That is going to be, I'm going to show you the quizzes, and the quizzes and tests, because there's pretty strong quiz and test functionality here in Brightspace. Then I'm going to show you the gradebook setup, and then I want to show you the grading process as well. And if we have any time, I want to show you how to create rubrics too. So.
Hello, this is Chloe Martin. I have a question.
Hey, Chloe.
Hey, so might be more of a general question about teaching an online class and sort of like expectations with assignments for students.
Yeah.
So in person, when I teach in person, I like to include as many on-campus activities and take advantage of on-campus activities that are already paid for and going on. So such as like if there's a Black History Month exhibit or an exhibit focused on diversity, equity, inclusion that's already being funded and paid for and ongoing programming on campus, I like to incorporate those things in my classes that meet in person when they correlate with the class times. But with online, is that a fair, would it be fair for me to create some sort of quiz or assignment around students attending those events? Because there might be some students maybe who are taking the class and they're overseas or abroad. Do you have any ideas, I guess, for how I could still capitalize on like things going on in the city or things going on campus in the class, even though it's online? Any ideas about that?
So that can be tricky because you might have students at a distance, and very likely at FIT you'll have enough students at a distance where they're physically unable to attend any of those types of things. So what I would seek out is what is available virtually. So
okay.
Yeah, anything that has an online presence, I think would be appropriate.
If I can just add to that, Rob, sorry, I just taught, I just got back and I'm caught the tail end of that, but we have had a few classes that do require museum visits and other things, activities in the city. And in that case, we do allow that because still the majority of our online courses are, I think probably, around 80% are students that are around campus in the area. So we have let that happen, but we do ask that faculty provide another type of activity that would meet those requirements in the online environment or somewhere else. Like we had this home products course that required students to go into a certain store and check out home products. But then the professor said, if you're not in the area, if you could let me know what you can find in your area, and I'll let you know if that's okay. It's a little bit more legwork, but we have certainly had to accommodate that and work with that. And we've worked with faculty to make suggestions for how they can accommodate students, if that helps.
Okay, yeah, that helps a lot. So it's a reasonable expectation to request that as long as you're providing flexibility and options and tailoring it for the students and what they have available to them, no matter where they are located.
And Rob's right, there are a lot of online and virtual experiences too to draw from. So if you could work those in, that's great. But yes, you've summed it up perfectly.
Thank you all so much. That really helps a lot.
Great.
Yeah. Well said, Tammy, because I didn't talk about that. Offline activities, you can certainly have students do offline activities. It's what you want to do is create a task for them to contribute summaries, insights, whatever you can in the online space.
That's right.
Other questions? Okay, well, we've come up to our break here. So
Great timing.
yeah, I have this little, so I'm going to keep the room open just so you all know. That's makes it so that we only need one link for today. So essentially 1 hour from now, we'll start our afternoon session.